Where are they going to get the money next year? How long is that fund going to last? And then you have all of the future draws off the teacher's pension fund as the teachers retire. There are people theorizing that in Illinois, the pension funds are going to run dry in about the next 5 to 10 years, 5 to 6 years. And if that's the estimate, then it might actually be sooner, depending on how fast the economy turns around and whether the state can start making its pension payments. California, same problem. The entire Northeast. How many people saw the latest Chris Christie YouTube from yesterday or 2 days ago? Awesome, isn't it? I'm going to get to Chris Christie in a minute, but he's starting to talk about the financial decay. I'll end with this one thing. This is another one to write down, to use as a tool when you want to talk to your friends and neighbors about education reform, or education transformation, I should say. The existing system is unsustainable. Not only will it have to change, it'll have to change sooner, not only from a cultural perspective, not only from an intellectual perspective, but from a financial perspective, because there isn't enough money in this education, in future tax payments, to pay for the promises they've made in the last 10 or 15 or 20 years. And if you go and dig around in your local school district, particularly in Illinois, but it would not surprise me if this was going on everywhere. If you dig around in your local school district, if you try to run for school board to be the one person on the 7 board who says, wait a minute, why should we spend this much money? Here's what you're going to find out. Most school districts are actually legalized money laundering schemes. And I wish I had a map. I wish I could very rapidly explain to you how some of this stuff works, but you have teachers' unions, you have textbook companies, you have associations of school boards, you have associations of superintendents. And what do? They all go to Springfield and they hand the legislators a campaign check, and then they hand the legislators model legislation that they'd like to see passed, and it all gets passed. Really quick examples. In Illinois, we have something called life safety health exceptions. It sounds wonderful. It's an exception about getting a school built if the taxpayers don't vote yes on a building referendum. That means the school board gets to turn around and say, well, we're going to go around the school board, we're going to go around the referendum by doing this, that, and the other thing. And then you find out that this idea that you have a life safety health exception is actually just an expensive bond churning scheme for a vast network of municipal bond dealers to make a lot of money off of continuously tearing down and building new schools all over places that don't necessarily need them. Does anybody here have an experience in their local area about a perfectly good school being torn down to build a brand new Taj Mahal? And make no mistake, I'm not saying that having good facilities isn't beneficial, but again, at what cost? And if you, I mean, again, Illinois is the poster child. I have on my computer a basket of articles from a paper called the Daily Herald called Broken Bonds, and they talked about how premium bonds, which incidentally Obama just exported up to the national level, premium bonds, where the bond dealers make a lot of money, the school district gets to take existing debt, roll it over into even higher debt, and then they turn around and they pay the school district a premium, which immediately goes into paying for existing payroll, and all of a sudden you've just give a bunch of money to a closed monopoly, while taxpayers in that district are going to be on the hook for that for the next 30 years. I could go on and on about the financial shenanigans, but make no mistake, if you say to one of your neighbors, it wouldn't surprise me if public education, even in this fine state or in our fine district, is a legalized money laundering scheme. If you really dug around, you could prove that statement. I've never been proven wrong in Illinois when I say that. Now that's all the bad news. And I'll just add a couple little tidbits of bad news too. Powerful interests want things to stay this way. And as nice as your kid's teacher or your grandchild's teacher may be, that teacher is probably a member of a teachers' union. And whether they're nice or not nice teachers, they're members of the union, they support the union, and the unions want this gravy train to continue. They have support in that many, many people still have a love of, I got a good public education. I grew up in a nice suburb. And I had a great opportunity to get a public education. We had band, we had gym, we had all of these things, and guess what? They were all able to do this somehow in the 60s and 70s without the massive quantities of waste and abuse they do now, and the fat pensions and everything like that. But people love the public education system, so what we have to do is somehow start undermining the public support for the existing system and start increasing support for a better system. And here's how we do it. We're now on the upside of things, the good news. The good news is, and feel free to use this, feel free to tell all your friends and neighbors this one. You're going to get a lot of people who agree with you, and they're going to say, gosh, I know you're right, but we can't really do anything. The teachers' unions, they're just too powerful. It's impossible to win. Here's what to tell them. And this will motivate them, this will keep them motivated. The teachers' unions in the existing education system occupies about the same position as the Soviet Union did in 1985. They looked powerful, but they're close to collapse. And it's our job, with all the candidates we help, with all the Tea Party people we try to organize, with all of the things we're trying to do at this conference, at this Expo conference, it's our job to keep the pressure up. And I'm going to give you a nice little pressure metaphor in just a minute. And then, as we keep the pressure up, and people ask us what are the answers, we have to have the right answers to give them. And here's the key point. The main key point of this is the 4 words: fund children, not systems. Fund children, not bureaucracies. But the second key point, and I've alluded to it already, is don't talk about reform. Talk about transformation. Talk about transitioning from this system that's bureaucracy-based to a system that's child-based. And again, you're going to get people nodding their heads. People are going to go, oh yeah, I want to go to a child-based system, not a bureaucracy-based system. How do we do that? And then you give them the answers. How many people do you think, if you went to people who called themselves liberal Democrats, and there are some very nice liberal Democrats I know, and you said, I got 4 words for you: fund children, not systems, when it comes to education. Do you agree with that? 90% of the most liberal Democrats are going to agree with that statement. Get them on your ground. Same thing with, wouldn't you like to transition from a bureaucracy-based system that funded buildings and unions and associations and salaries and benefits? Wouldn't you like to go to a system that funded the child? Yeah, I would. How do we do that? Well, the money should follow the child. And those are the things to start saying to get them to begin with the end in mind. And then once you have them on your side, and once you have them kind of listening to what you're saying, then you have to have some fun with them by saying, we can't blow the system up, but we can slowly over time dismantle it and move it to a better system. And most people will agree with that, and they'll ask you, how do we do that? And I want to very quickly end with a couple of ways to do that and then do a couple of concepts, because I do want to have time to get to your questions. I got a little bit of time here. But you need to be able to tell folks a good answer, the right answer, something that they'll agree with. And here's what's going to happen. A fun story from a presentation like this that I gave to a Rotary group a few weeks ago. And one of the women in the audience was a school board member at a very Tony Chicago school district, if you've ever heard of the town of Wilmette, just north of the city. And she comes running up to me afterwards. It was a budget presentation where I talked about education spending. And she goes, where would you cut? Where would you cut? I've done everything. I've cut everything. We've been on this board. And she was a very dedicated person. I'm not trying to cast any aspersions at all. She knew what she was talking about. She had been a school board member in Wilmette, and a fairly diligent one. And every single thing she said, how do I take care of the special education mandates? We have to do this. If I don't do this, we get sued. And we've had a couple of lawsuits, and we lost them. So we had to spend millions on that. And then she said, well, what about transportation? What about busing? Or how are you going to cut this? I'm down to 4 administrators. I'm venturing to bet she's got a lot more than 4 administrators, but I haven't been able to go into her specific district yet and do the research. But it dawned on me as I was having this, interesting and exciting kind of conversation back and forth with someone who disagrees with me on this stuff. And I said, it's very interesting. you've keyed me into something. And she said, what's that? And it's like, would you or would you not agree with this statement? Based on all of the things that you're telling me, on all of the pieces of money that you need, and how broke you are, how the state owes you $2.5 million, and all these other things that are going on in Illinois, isn't it fair to say that virtually no amount of money would fix this system? I mean, just look at all the things you told me about. The minute you dump another $1 million in, it's completely absorbed. And if it's not absorbed by something, then the school board's going to find a roofing contract to go, and they're going to have to re-roof one of the buildings. Incidentally, in Illinois, on a school district building, roofing costs 3 times more than it costs in any kind of commercial roofing of a commercial building anywhere. And you almost can't get them to cut prices, because the school boards just rubber stamp the spending. And that's just one little tiny thing. Well, if you're spending three times as much on roofing, how's that money following a child? You know, money should follow the roofing contractor. Money should follow the building contractor. Money should follow the retiring superintendent in the form of a huge pension. It's time to stop all that. And more people are starting to come around to see that. So another line to use is that this system cannot be reformed in the present context. And they'll go, what does that mean? And it's like, no amount of money can improve it. The minute you dump more money in, the system is designed to pull it in and absorb it somehow. Another mandate. Oh, we haven't been able to meet this mandate, but it's like, oh, the state didn't pay us. We have to go and pay this thing. Oh, the working cash bond is empty. We have to fill the working cash bond. You wouldn't believe the things that they're capable of doing. And again, I'm probably using one of the worst states as an example, because Illinois is a legalized money laundering scheme, its entire government. But the fact is, you're going to come down to that. So here's a key thing to start getting into people's heads. Get them to start questioning the concept of a school district. Local control in the form of a school district is almost entirely a myth. And that's as true of the big districts as it is of the small ones. Everybody thinks that when they get John Smith, their buddy next door, onto the school board, he's going to represent their interests. And to some extent, a lot of John Smiths do, and they try. But in Illinois, and I'm sure it's true in a lot of other states, everything the school board is capable of doing is already pretty much dictated by the state code and who wrote the state code. And oh, incidentally, if your state was one of the ones lucky enough to get Race to the Top funding, or it just changed its entire curricular standards, it's now federalized. So what used to be a potentially local control thing, the school district that was invented in 1910, and you could hire the teacher and you could fire the teacher, and if the teacher did something wrong, you might be able to get a better teacher in there, you might be able to do something to him, has now become a bureaucratized engine that you can't fire people, you can't get rid of them. I mean, you literally have to have someone molest one of the children or do something heinous or horrendous, or you literally have to find someone guilty of embezzlement at the administration level before you can even begin the process of getting rid of them, is where we are now. So it's gotten pretty bad. So get them to start questioning the school district. Here's a fun way to do it. And I can prove this over time. You're never going to walk up to somebody and say, hi, I want to talk to you about reforming or transforming education. And they say, oh yeah, talk to me about it. It's like, money should follow the child. You should have school choice, and put $10,000 or $7,500 in the child's backpack and have them follow it to a whole new range of independent schools. Some people are going to go, that sounds like a good idea. How do we do that? Other people are going to say, oh no! What about my teacher? What about my alma mater? What about that brick and mortar school system I went to? And I support improving existing public schools.